Hey friends, Ellen here and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about what not to say when someone breaks your boundary. Now, boundaries are such tricky things. For so many of us, we've got to figure out what our boundaries are, and then we've got to figure out how to actually communicate them with someone in the first place. It can be really scary to set a boundary because it feels like we're going to push people away. But boundaries are actually really important when it comes to relationships. This is not necessarily going to be a video where I walk you through how to figure out what your boundaries are, how to communicate them initially. This is really about once you've set that boundary. And once you've set that boundary, what do we do and what do we say once somebody breaks it? As you might expect, I have thoughts on this, and these really derive from a number of situations that have occurred with me where people have broken my boundaries. Maybe it's clients from my day job who have been contacting me on my days off or well before my work hours start. And I'm not talking like 8 a.m. versus 9 a.m. I'm talking about like texting me at 3:30 a.m. because they're on the East Coast. I'm talking about the friend that reschedules constantly last minute when you've asked them not to because it feels like a disrespect of your schedule and your time. Those are the kind of situations that have happened in my life that have really made me think about and question how I respond to those situations. And the big way that I used to respond is by saying this: it's okay. Oftentimes when people break our boundaries, our inner people pleaser can come out, and we can often spend a lot of time reassuring that person. But in one situation in my life, I really started to think about, is it actually okay? Am I actually okay with the fact that this person is breaking this boundary, perhaps repeatedly? And I ultimately came to the conclusion that I'm not. This really hit me in a situation with a friend of mine who we had met while I was abroad on remote year. We were really trying to spend some time reconnecting, catching back up after remote year, and we kept scheduling time in our calendars to do that. And yet, an hour, sometimes less than that, before our scheduled time where we were going to jump on a Zoom call and catch up with each other, she would reschedule and she would reschedule and she would reschedule. Sometimes rescheduling to times when I wasn't actually available or it really wasn't a good time for me to meet. And yet she didn't ask. She just said, hey, something came up, I need to reschedule. The really frustrating part for me is that it was often just kind of felt like she was moving our call because something better came along. And it felt really disrespectful and it felt really hurtful. And every time this would happen, I would say, it's okay. I would tell her maybe that I had a conflict or it wasn't a good time, but I would always say the phrase, it's okay. And one final time when she did this though, I found myself about to say the standard, it's okay. And I realized something that kind of hit me like a ton of bricks, that it actually wasn't okay. No part of the situation felt okay to me anymore. I was pretty upset with the fact that she kept breaking my boundary, disrespecting my time, and frankly, deprioritizing me and our relationship for these other things that were coming along. That's how it felt to me. But I did want to acknowledge for her that I appreciated her apology. So what I did is, instead of saying it's okay, which kind of felt like an invalidation of my feelings and my boundaries, I started to say, thank you, I appreciate your apology. And this got me thinking about the question, why do we say it's okay when it's not actually okay? Why do we say it's okay in our lives in situations where it truly doesn't feel okay to us? I remember talking to my mom about this and telling her kind of my theory and how I really have stopped saying it's okay all the time in situations where it's not okay. And I remember her saying back to me, well, it must be a generational thing, because she just could not get on board with the idea of not saying it's okay, not reassuring somebody in the situation. But I guess to me, I've gotten to the point where I really don't say it's okay a lot anymore, except in a few situations. And you might 100% disagree with this, and that's okay. I'm happy to hear your perspective. Go ahead and drop a comment below. I'd love to hear kind of your thoughts on this. Maybe you've never thought about this before, but for me, I don't really say it's okay a lot. Only in particular situations, because to me, saying it's okay kind of dismisses the situation. It invalidates my emotions and how I feel about that situation. And it quite literally tells that person that what they did was okay. And I think that's really where this comes in. Before we say it's okay, what we should really ask ourselves is it actually okay? Are we okay with the fact that this happened and that they did this? That they, texted us at 3:30 a.m., that they, kept canceling the time we were supposed to spend together. Is it actually okay? Or is it a situation that doesn't feel good to you and that you're trying to reassure them? If saying it's okay doesn't feel good to you, well, then it's probably not okay, and we probably shouldn't be saying this. I think this is especially true in a situation where somebody is a repeat offender. Oftentimes, I find that the people who are disrespecting our boundaries tend to be the same people over and over and over again. I don't know if anybody else notices that, but in my life, when there's a boundary that I've set and somebody is disrespecting it, it is usually that same person over and over and over again. And that's why I've come to think that that language is so important. Perhaps the reason why they're doing this, perhaps the reason why they're breaking our boundary over and over and over again is because every time we do, we are telling them it's okay. If it's not okay, we've got to stop telling them that it is. Only then, in my opinion, are we going to break the cycle of boundary violations. If someone isn't a repeat offender, I think at that point it's about making a judgment call. If they've never broken a boundary before, or they're like extremely remorseful about breaking a boundary, then it might be okay to say it's okay. Let me give you another example in my day job. I take every effort in my day job to communicate my work hours, to communicate when I am available to my families. I have it in an out of office responder. I have it in my email signature. I let them know, in those first few sessions that I have with a new tutoring student, I let them know as consistently as I possibly can. And yet I still have particular families, particular students that are always texting me on my days off and that are always texting me outside of my work hours. I have these families that are constantly doing that. They are constantly reaching out to me on the days that I have tried to communicate that I'm not available, or in the hours of the day when I've tried to communicate that I'm not available. Those are the repeat offenders. And I know they know, because a lot of the times they will preface their messages with, I know it's your day off, but, or I know I am within the cancellation deadline, but they acknowledge and are aware of the boundary and the thing that they are violating, and yet they're constantly asking for an exception. That's another telltale sign that it is somebody who is a repeat offender, is they literally acknowledge the boundary before they break it. And in that situation, if someone has done it over and over again, if they're literally acknowledging the boundary they're about to break before they break it, that's not okay anymore in my situation. But on the contrary, I have other families that I've worked with where they will literally text me. Actually, this happened recently. It happened a couple weeks ago. They literally texted me on my day off. And as soon as the text came through, it was actually so sweet. She was just like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot. It's your day off. Please wait to respond until you get back to work. Like, she realized she'd made a mistake immediately. And this is a family who is not a repeat offender. They never contact me on my day off. And in this one instance, when they did, they realized they'd made a mistake. And they let me know, hey, don't worry, it's not urgent. Just text me when you get back to work. That's the difference, in my opinion. Someone who is clearly abusing the system, frankly, versus someone who isn't. Someone who has remorse when they realize they did something wrong versus somebody who clearly doesn't. That's the difference in my book. So the thing ultimately that I think we should not say when it comes to broken boundaries, it's okay. We've got to stop saying it's okay, especially in situations when it's not. And again, to jump back to the beginning, what we can say instead of that, instead of saying it's okay, say, thank you for acknowledging this, or thank you for your apology. I appreciate it. We can thank them instead of invalidating what we're feeling and invalidating the boundary and the situation with an it's okay. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. I'm curious to hear if you've ever thought of it this way. Obviously, it's not as cut and dry, but I just think really the takeaway that I want you to have from this is don't always use it's okay as kind of the default cop-out answer in situations where people violate your boundaries. Really spend some time and ask yourself, is it truly okay that they invalidated my boundary? And if it's not, then don't say it. That's really the thing that I want you to take from today. But let me know what you think of this. Drop a comment below. And again, if you're liking what you're seeing, go ahead and like, subscribe, and I will see you all next time. Bye.